All right, everyone, it's time for a new video after a long time, and we are in season 4 of the Just KNIME It challenges, and right now we are already at challenge number 5, but I want to take the time to introduce you to my solution of last week's challenge, which was the Rick and Morty catalog. You see it probably on the screen here. So basically what you needed to do, I'll describe in the description below the video. You'll find the link to the challenge so you can have a look at it in detail if you want to. But basically what you need to do is you should take KNIME, connect to this Rick and Morty API and extract names and IDs. So each of these characters in the Rick and Morty API have names and IDs. And there is a standard API that you can connect to. I've opened it here in the browser and you can see it right now. And there are basically several, sub APIs that you can connect to for characters, for locations, for episodes, etc. The one we want to look at is really the character. So the URL is rickandmortyapi.com/API/character. And the idea to do this is through a loop. So here in the intermediate friendly objectives, KNIME also states implement a recursive loop to handle paginated API responses. So what does that mean? Well, basically it means if we approach this API like so, just a moment. Let me just copy that, go over here and just say character. Well, we get a list of 20 characters. However, the API has more than 20 characters. It has, I guess, 826 characters. And this list is paginated. And you can see it here at the very top, pages 42. And next page would be page 2. So this is the pattern. If we just zoom in here a little bit, page 2. So this is the pattern we're looking for. Each page is basically rickandmortyapi.com/ap/character ? And then the page is handed over as a parameter. Page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And here we already see that we have 42 pages. So let's switch over to KNIME and let me show you how I have solved this problem. So first of all, I sent a GET request to the character API. Very simple. Basically only the default settings at the character API here. And if we run this workflow, we get something like a JSON response. You see it here, blah, 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 blah. And the part we're interested for this very first step is how many pages do we have to loop through? And that is contained here in this info or header, if we want to call it. So somehow we need to extract this information before we start the main workflow. So let's look how we do this. We use a JSON path. We basically click here on this element on the pages on the 42, and then we said add single query. And you see it creates this query and extracts this as a extraction cell, so to say. Let me just delete this because I already have this here. Remove JSON path, I don't need it twice. Console, let's just run it. And we now see we get the number of pages here as an integer. So that is a very good information because we can utilize that basically in our loop because it tells us how many times we have to loop through each of the steps. So what do? I basically use a table manipulator node to keep only the column with the page numbers here. I also renamed it to my personal way of naming variables. It's var number of pages. Then I turn this into a flow variable. And you see now I have an integer variable called var number of pages, and it contains the integer number 42, the number of iterations or pages, which is the same in this case. And then I start going through the loop. So I start with a counting loop start, and instead of entering this manually, because what if Rick and Morty continues? What if tomorrow we have 45 pages or 52 pages or whatever? I want to have this workflow as dynamic as possible. So I feed this extracted number of loops or pages or iterations or however you want to call this in here, basically to override the number of loops with this number I have extracted before. Okay, now I can do this. Then let me just start one iteration. So we now see, okay, I have basically this. Then I go into the variable expression, because as KNIME, always I wanted to create the next page, so to say, the request URL I'm going to use, and that is basically, I use a very simple join function here in the expression node. I join the API URL, and then with the parameter page equals, and then I take the current iteration, which at the beginning is 0. KNIME always starts counting at 0, but there is no page 0, and that's why I add +1 here. So let me just show you what it does. Let's just do evaluate. You see, it creates https rickandmortyapi.com API character page 1. So that's the first page we feed in our get request as a flow variable using the variable expression node. Now the get request, very simple or very similar to before. You see I don't have even the address here. I feed it in through the flow variables, and for the constant URI I say var request URL. Now if I run this, you see it worked. I get a status code of 200. That basically means, hey, this is a valid response, or this is a valid request. Here is the response. The response here is in that second body column. We'll just scroll down a little bit, or we can even open the table here and make it a little bit bigger so we can see it like this. You see, okay, here it starts, right? It starts with Rick Sanchez, blah, 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 blah. Where is his last location, image, and so on and so forth. We come to the image in a moment. And then I just go through all 42 iterations of the loop. So let me just quickly start it. You see, I now send all the get requests. Takes a moment to iterate over it 42 times, but not too long. So you see now I have 42 rows, and in each of these bodies, I have basically 20 characters. So now I filter out all the columns that I don't want. I only want that second body column. So I basically delete everything else. And then I take another JSON path. And here I extract exactly what I want to have, the ID and the name, because looking again at the task, if we look here, we should extract the with 2 columns, ID and character name. And that's exactly what we do here. So we get the IDs and the names. They get extracted, very important. They get extracted as a list because we went over 42 pages, but on each page we had 20 items, right? So we need to extract this as a list, and then in the next step, split up that list into individual rows. One thing I saw in another video was, hey, how can I make that the output column does not hold IDs? Because by default, if I click here and add this, wait a minute, add this JSON path as a collection query, it says IDs, but I don't want to have it IDs. I want to have it ID or whatever, ABC. I could override it here. Let me just cancel that and remove the JSON path because we don't need it. Click OK. So now we have basically a column with 20 IDs in every row and the matching 20 names in every row. And now all we have to do is we just and you see the data type here is for both columns is list. So the next step we need to do is we need to go here and we just ungroup these lists. And now we have 826 rows, ID of the character, name of the character. So that was the main task. But I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could not only extract the name of the character, but also let the user select a specific name and visualize in a tile the character image. So let me just first show you the result. So here you can select any character from that list. Let's just take Frankenstein's monster. And you see Frankenstein's monster has the ID of 128, and here is an image of it. Also, very interesting, if we look, for example, at Morty's father, Jerry Smith, he appears in that whole list 3 times. So if we do this, we get all 3 entries, which is from the task perspective correct, because in the crazy Rick and Morty world, we have 3 times in different dimensions Jerry Smith here. The first one with this image, ID 5, then the next one with ID 175, and the last one with 177. So how did I do this? Well, let me show you. First, having already the ID here, I discovered that basically the image of each of these aliens, if we just look at the image, we see it also follows a certain pattern. rickandmortyapi.com API character and then /avatar/id.jpg. So we already have the ID, right? So let's just create that URL. Again, I'm using a joiner here, so I use this now extended URL character avatar. Then I add the ID, which currently is a number, an integer as a text, and then I add .jpg. And that creates these rows. And if you see Summer Smith, if we go to the browser and paste it in here, you would see a picture of Summer. Or we go back to KNIME and take the image of Morty. So that works definitely. One thing I needed to do here, so I'm creating that image URL. So let's just go into this component very quickly. What I basically do is then I first create this single selection widget, where I give the user the option to choose the character. So I'm using a column filter to only keep the names. I group them into one single list, turn that into a flow variable and feed it into the single selection widget. If you want to see it more detailed, let me know in the comments below of this video. So here in the flow variables, I say, take that list with all the names so the user can select from that. And very importantly, I triggered the re-execution. So every time the user makes a choice, everything after that single selection widget, which is basically all the other nodes, gets re-executed. Then I use that name that the user has selected to filter down the 826 to only the ones that the user has selected. Here in this case, it's Jerry, 3 lines. Then I use the URL in the image reader table node. That is an extension, KNIME image processing. You find it. There is a read image node, but that cannot read JPEG files. So I used this image reader table node from the KNIME image processing extension that you need to install. Then I set renderer to image, which creates an image this next node that tile view can work with. And it's really very simple here, right? I just say, okay, where do you find the URL? That's basically it. That then downloads it, and then the renderer to image already recognizes which column holds the image. It renders it, and here in the tile view, I just say I want to see the ID and the image. The tile column, the tile title basically holds the is the name, and I basically disabled all of the interactivity, which results in something like this. So we have the name here, the ID here, the image here. You of course can make this more beautiful. And then in the layout editor, I do have the single selection widget, the drop down at the top and the tile view at the bottom. And that basically is my little additional bonus where you can basically select any character and see it here displayed with the avatar or character image. So that was basically it. You can find this workflow. I have a version 1 where I only fulfill the main objectives, and a version 2 where you see this bonus as well on the KNIME community app. You can download it, play with it around if you want to. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you have any questions. Very much looking forward to the next challenges, seeing what I can show you there. See you next time.